Hello everybody and welcome to the Whiskey Dictionary, where I do the research to try to teach you a little something about what you're drinking. Have I ever told you how much you mean to me? Really? You are all so fantastic that I went out and I bought you a dozen roses. And so for the month of October, I'm going to be talking about Four Roses, and specifically their three mainline expressions here. This week, I'm going to be talking about just regular Four Roses Bourbon. Now this has been dubbed Yellow Label for obvious reasons. And then next week, next Friday, I'm going to be talking about Small Batch, and the following Friday, I'm going to be talking about Single Barrel. But for now, let's get into this one. If this is your first time with me and you enjoy whiskey reviews or whiskey information or just whiskey in general, then click that subscribe button. And next to the subscribe button, you'll see a little bell notification icon. If you click on that, you'll get to get a little alert whenever I put up a new video, and specifically whenever I do live streams. On that note, hang around to the end of the episode to find out about my next live stream. So let's talk about the distillery. Now, Four Roses Distillery is the kind of distillery that I look for when I'm trying to make one of these videos. If you have seen my episode on Yamazaki, that's what I love. I love when a distillery has a cool history behind it, and Four Roses does. So the founder, Paul Jones Jr., in the late 1800s, became infatuated with a Southern belle. And he sent her a proposal. Basically, he said, I want to marry you. And if you accept, then she said that if she accepted, she would wear some roses to this grand ball that they were going to be having. So he got there a little early, as you probably would too, and just kind of waited for her to show up. And she showed up and she was wearing a corsage with four roses on it, and thus dubbed the name Four Roses for his distillery. So he had already kind of had a successful bourbon whiskey business, basically, but he decided to move it to Louisville, Kentucky, because you got to figure, if you're going to have a successful bourbon, then you probably want to be in Kentucky. So he was there for a number of years, and all was well. Then he decided to move to Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, and during the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, he had some really good luck, and it was like one of the best-selling bourbons in the country. And then something happened. So Seagram's, they bought the distillery, and they decided to shut down they stopped selling it in the United States. Instead, they wanted to focus over in Asia and Europe. So what the United States got as far as Four Roses was this blend of bourbon that didn't really taste anything like any of these. And so we were still kind of allowed to buy it here, but all of the good stuff was going overseas. Now this continued for a long time. I think it was like 40, 50 years until 2002 when they kind of came back. And they took a little bit more time because they kind of had to replenish their stores. And around 2004, they opened up shop again and they started selling it. And only took a few years for them to be given an award for the best American bourbon. I think it was 2011, 12, and 13, 3 years in a row. They ended up winning Best American Bourbon. So they kind of came a long way, but it's odd to think that such an awesome whiskey, I mean, you've heard of Four Roses, I'm sure, and probably not in a negative way. It's crazy to think that a whiskey like that may not have even been something that we got to taste for 50 years. So anyway, let's talk more specifically about this whiskey. Four Roses Distillery produces 10 different batches of whiskey, and that's 5 different yeast strains times 2 mash bills, and that gives you your 10, all of which end up in here. And generally they're doing that for consistency's sake, and that's part of the reason that this ended up making my definitive beginner bourbon buying guide, is that consistency was something I knew I could depend on when recommending this whiskey. So let's go into the nosing and the tasting and see how this one stands up. All right, so while I'm pouring this, let me just say that, screw top. This is a $17 whiskey. I believe that's what I bought it for. It's not going to be top shelf, but let's see how the nose and the taste hold up. All right, let's go for the nose. Well, it smells like a bourbon. It smells a little bit light. You've got some pear in there, actually. That's pretty prominent, and as well as some kind of like little appley, but generally just kind of citrusy fruits. There's a very small hint of spice on there, and then kind of followed up with honey. All right, cheers. Well, I'll give it a couple things. Well, I'm trying to think of how to word this properly. So I want to say it's almost watery, you know, like it doesn't have a very bold flavor. It's thin, you know. Because of that, this stuff, you could practically chug it, but please don't. So as far as the flavors that you get out of here, it's almost like it just goes down too smooth. Let me try again. Yeah, so the smoothness it would be really good for a beginner, but I think if you've got much experience at all with whiskey, or especially bourbons, I think you're gonna be kind of bored with this. As far as flavor goes, you're getting some apple, you're not really getting much oak, which is a little surprising. That could be because it's a bit thin. You're getting a little bit of cinnamon in there, and that's about it. Maybe a small hint of vanilla, but I don't even know that I would register that. So my general opinion of this, so as per my new grading scale, I'm going to give this a grade of try it. And I don't think that this is worth it to buy even at $17, just because I feel like you're gonna try this, think it's okay, and then the bottle's gonna hang around, and maybe you share it with a couple people or whatever, but it's not gonna be something that you continue to go back to. So I think if you go to a bar and you see it and you've never tried it, give it a shot. I do think that if you are completely new to bourbon, this would potentially be something that you could buy, especially for the price. But I think that there's other things on my previous list that would be a little better and more worth your money. I will say that as I said, this is good for an aspiring bourbon drinker, and maybe even, you know, this is gonna sound a little sexist, but like if your girlfriend or your wife or whatever doesn't really like whiskey and you want to introduce them to something, I mean, the number one thing that I hear from women that I have try whiskey is like, you know, they make that face and then they say it's too strong. This is not that. This is light and this is thin. I think that they'll still make the face a little bit, but this is definitely closer to what I think that you could pass off. So generally, I'll just say this is pretty lackluster. I don't think this is a great whiskey, but I do think it's okay for a beginner. That being said, once again, I give it my rating of try it, and I will just kind of call this episode here. So let's kind of talk about what I'm going to be doing the next couple weeks. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be going into the small batch, and then I'm going to be going into the single barrel, and I'm going to be doing this for the next couple Fridays. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a live stream. So today, or when this video comes out, it's going to be Friday, right? So I'm going to be doing a live stream on the following Sunday. I'm not sure exactly what the date is. I think it's the 15th. So if you have never been to one of my live streams, they're pretty fun. At least I like to think so. I pretty much just do this. I sit here, I chat, I drink, and I kind of talk to the people in the chat. And usually some fun stories come out of it. If you've never seen one of my live streams, maybe go back and watch a couple. Anyway, so I would highly encourage you to show up. The more people, the better, and I hope to see you there. So if not, I will see you next Friday for my review on small batch, and I look forward to it. Have a good rest of your night. Nosing and tasting, nosing and tasting.